You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's good to be back with you again. You're listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, and I'm Steve Adams on Mighty Blue. This is episode number 384 of the podcast, and while I mention the number of episodes, we're closing in on number 400 sometime in November. I'd like to do something special for number 400, but I'm not sure exactly what to do. Let me know if you have any idea. It'll be released just before Thanksgiving, so maybe a Thanksgiving theme. Anyway, you know the drill. You can email me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com, or if you check out our website, there's a microphone button that lets you record a message of, I think, up to about 2 minutes. Not many people seem to notice that, but I'd truly love to hear from some of you. Today, we meet two lovely ladies who are members of the class of 2019, as I was. In fact, I interviewed them briefly at Glen Cliff just before climbing Mount Moosilauke. They are Kristy and Annette Dumbell, collectively known as two parts of the Wonder Women. When I met them, there was a third Wonder Woman, Lynn, but today we've got the two of them. I should warn you now, we had to record over the phone and the sound quality isn't as good as I'd like, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to speak with Kristy and Annette, so we made do. The Wonder Women will be on shortly. We visit again with three of our surviving, for now, Mighty Blue class of 23. Sadly, we lost another one this week. Our class will be on after Kristy and Annette. Finally, George Stefanos has reached one of my favourite spots, certainly one of the most memorable, on the entire Appalachian Trail, Franconia Ridge. What a place! Somewhere between all these goodies, I have answers from Nancy East to a couple of your doggy questions, as well as a postcard I received all the way back at Trail Days. So we should get to it. Here are two of the Wonder Women, Kristy and Annette Dumbell. Our guests today are a couple of ladies I met on my 2019 through hike. They were with another woman, and collectively they were known as the Wonder Women. This is Kristy and Annette Dumbell. Hey ladies, how are you?
Great.
Good. Actually, where are you both?
We right now are in Pueblo, Colorado.
Doing what?
Well, we're in between trips. So,
all right.
So yeah, we're here. My parents live here, and we're here helping them out for a little bit before our next adventure.
I was wondering about that this morning. I was putting these questions together. You've had a lot of adventures, most of which I want to talk about in a minute. How do you do you regard your adventures as breaks between your normal life, or your normal life as breaks between adventures?
Yeah, the latter. Our normal life is a break between adventures, or adventures are our normal life now.
Well, I'll come to those in a minute, and I know you two have been together as a couple now. I think you told me 20 years. Have you always backpacked together, or was this something that one of you did when you were younger and got the other one into it?
We both backpacked before we met, and we just kept right on with it. Well, the first time we ever went out, we met and looked at maps for a local backpacking trip that we wanted to do. So that was our beginning. Yeah.
So you obviously share a life, but you also share a feeling or a love for hiking. And looking at the itinerary you've had over the years, I can see that you do. What is it what's doing it for you out there? And do you both love it for the same reasons?
I think so. I mean, we retired early as we could, so we could do some of these big adventures that we want to do. And we just wanted to, we wanted to have more experiences rather than just stuff. So we decided that we would just, sell everything we own and get an RV and start adventuring that way. And then also we wanted to do these long hikes. And we love being outside. We love the backpacking we love because we're out there we love the long distance because we're out there for a long period of time. And there's something about being out there for a long period of time that we really, really like. In our tent, camping, being in nature, being dirty. I mean, really, it's unplugging,
being challenged. We like the challenge and we like the unpredictability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you never know what your day is going to be like.
Absolutely.
And it's like a gift. It's like a gift that just unfolds. Every day unfolds before us, and we love that. We like to have a plan, but let it be flexible within that plan of whatever we're doing. Yeah. And we're constantly using our brains. I mean, even in the RV life, we're planning stuff, we're researching, we're in new places. You know, we like the change. We don't like being monotonous and predictable, like Annette said. So I think we like it for the same reason.
Well, funnily enough, I don't see any repeat hikes. Do you think you would ever go on another one again?
Oh, like repeat, like the Appalachian Trail, for instance?
Yeah.
we say we won't because there's so many new things to do. We're kind of fascinated by the people that do it over and over and over again.
Yes.
That's fascinating to us. We're like, well, that's really interesting.
I can't imagine doing those long hikes again. No, I could do like parts of it, but really we don't have enough time. There's too many other things to do. You know, Annette and I say, you know, if we're lucky enough to live till we're 85, we have 20 more summers left. I mean, we don't have time to be repeating stuff. We're like, there's so many things that we're not going to be able to do anyway. So we're like prioritizing and, you know, so we probably won't do them again.
Well, I did go. I mean, when we met in 2019, as I say, we met then, and that was my second through hike, and I wondered why I was doing it as well. So, you know, I'm as fascinated by that reason as well. I've never really worked it out. And funny enough, what you just said about there being something new every day, I've just joined this new Twitter sort of thing called Threads for some reason, and I said I'm happy to answer any questions about through hiking the Appalachian Trail, and someone said, "Tell us what your normal day is like." And I had to leave it overnight because I thought, is there a normal day? And I suppose a normal day, you get up every morning. Well, you get up every morning anyway, don't you? You have breakfast. I would say that I took 2 hours to get out of camp every morning. That was one thing that was pretty normal for me. But really, you're right. It's such an unpredictable thing. Even every single corner you go round, you never know what you're going to see around the corner, do you?
Right. That's part of the mystery part of it, or the event. That's part of the adventure, right? That it's an unpredictable thing.
And we're not about the destination. We weren't saying, hey, we're going to make it to the end and be, you know, through hikers. It was just the end to us is just something that makes us go forward. Really, we're really about the journey and meeting people, and that's the part we love the most. Is just that day after day. I'm just amazed that there's a footpath that goes from Canada to Mexico, from Georgia to Maine. I'm just amazed by that you could be on foot and you could go for 6 months walking. It's amazing.
You do. You get kind of, as you're out there and you've been walking for days and days and days, some of those days, you know, you haven't, especially on the Western trails, you haven't seen people, you haven't seen buildings, you haven't seen wires, you know, power wires. You're just out there. It starts to be like, wow, this is amazing that this is available to people. Yeah. Like, this is incredible. Yeah, but you can come out and do this.
It's something that I've never really tired of, you know, going on a trail. I've never really tired of it. And I'm looking at what you've done. You know, before we actually met, as I say, in 2019, but that absolutely wasn't your first rodeo, was it? Before the AT, you know, you did other trails. So what was your first long trail that you actually did?
Yeah, so the Colorado Trail was our first long distance trail, and it's 500 miles. And we had to wait till we retired to have the time to do it because it was always on our list. So while we were working, we did, you know, week-long backpack trips, maybe 2 weeks. But as soon as we retired, that was the very first thing we did is the Colorado Trail. And it's an awesome trail.
The Colorado Trail is uniquely beautiful and well managed, and you know, that's a great trail to start as your first trail because you're almost guaranteed to have a good experience.
Yeah.
And that gave you the taste to do other trails, or was it always the intention? Because I'm looking at you seem to do one a year, or maybe sometimes two, but basically one long 1 year. Because you then did, that was in 2015. Then you did the Oregon coast in 2016. How much was that part of the PCT, or was it a specific hike?
That's a specific hike on the coast of Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, Oregon, the entire coastline, north to south of Oregon, they kept public. So you can hike the Oregon Coast Trail. So you're hiking along the beaches and up into the dunes and the headlands.
Oh, yeah, fabulous.
Fabulous. That's another fabulous.
And it's 425 miles. So we did that in 2016, 2017. So we had a dog our first couple years, and then she had an illness and was getting old. So 2017, we did not do a long hike, and she ended up. We ended up losing her at the beginning of 2018. So then we started doing as a
Superior Trail.
yeah, we as part of our grief of losing our dog, we did the Lone Star Trail in Texas, which is 100 miles. And that's just because we were right there, and we said, let's just go walk for a week or whatever. So
if you're ever in Texas and you're doing other things there, visiting, Big Bend or whatever, and you decide you want to do that trail, so their 100-mile trail is their long trail. It's a very unique trail.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're walking it, it has no rocks.
All right.
No, it's all sand and dirt, but it doesn't have rocks.
It was really fun to do. So then during that, we made a plan to do the Appalachian Trail. That was March of 2018. And I had said, hey, you guys, let's make a plan a year from now that we try the Appalachian Trail. So, and then to train for the Appalachian Trail, also we did the Superior Trail, which is 350 miles, but we did half of that because I injured my foot.
Right.
So, and that was in 2018, and then we did the Appalachian Trail in 2019.
Yeah, and as I say, that's when we met, and I remember you were, looking back at that trip as well. Obviously, this is called Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, so I tend to talk more about the AT. You actually got to be quite well known out there, didn't you? And I think it probably was your persona as a 3 women hiking together, not kids, but really just having a blast out there the whole time. Were you aware of how much positive impact that you were having that year? Because I've seen your comments on YouTube, and they're very flattering.
We had no idea. And really, when we started doing this YouTube video, Annette and I, just a little bit before that, just on our RV adventures. And I said, well, let's just do some, we didn't watch videos or anything. I mean, we just said, let's do these YouTube for the Appalachian Trail, because kind of just for our family and my mom, kind of see, kind of show her what we're doing, and, just kind of connecting with people. So we didn't really have any followers or anything. We were just kind of doing it for family and friends. And we were amazed at how many people watch YouTube videos of hikers. And so right from the beginning, people were writing us saying, hey, when you get here, we want you to stay with us. We'll help you if you need help in this part. And we were like, wow, this is amazing. And it was a gift. And it actually was a gift that we did not know was there for us. We were just having fun doing what we love. But the people we met and the people going out of their way to help us and support us was the biggest gift of all.
Yeah, it's a whole other dimension of doing these treks. Is that
it is.
You get to meet people that, of course, you would never meet. We're like a woman in Pennsylvania, Terry. We still talk to her every week. I mean, you meet people, you connect with them, you stay in touch with social media or whatever, and it's just a really unusual thing, but a very heartwarming thing.
Oh man, it is just amazing. And then people started writing on our videos that, older people saying, you've motivated me to get out and walk. I'm walking now, and I joined the Y, and I'm doing, and that was meaningful for us. Like that people were motivated to kind of do more physical stuff in their life. Was just, we had people where, my mom is, bought a bike and she's riding her bike now, or, I'm doing my first backpack. You guys telling me that I can do it. That's been a gift.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? That's important, by the way. And I get this a lot from people will write to me, say that particular guest got me off my backside to go and do something. And that makes what you do more important. So did you start feeling almost an assumption of responsibility as you were doing these YouTube videos, because you could see how it was impacting people?
Yeah, well, it certainly motivated us. It motivated us to want to keep doing it, because if it was impacting, when you retire and you get out there and you're living your life, you still want to be purposeful in life. You know what I mean? So it kind of gave us a purpose, like we're impacting. Our goal is to live an authentic life and what's meaningful to us. But if you can impact people in that, then it's a positive. And so it motivates you to kind of keep doing it. And
as you probably can relate to, it's partly a function of our age, right? Because we are older, people are like, oh gosh, they're older and they're out there doing it.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
I should try a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I always say that people say if that fat old bloke can do it, talking about me, then I'm damn sure I could do it. And I'm happy. I'm happy to be that fat old bloke. I couldn't care less about that. I think it's great that people want to do it. And we actually met in Glencliff, and I actually stayed there that day. I wasn't sure I was intending to go on or something, but someone says, the Wonder Women coming, you're going to have to interview them. So we made sure we hung around and made sure that we spoke to you out there. How had the physicality of the hike gone for you? Because I know you've done these hikes before, but the Appalachian Trail at 2,200 miles is a lot longer than the Colorado Trail or the other trails you've done. Did you notice that big difference going to a 6-month trail?
Yeah, I tell you what, that Appalachian Trail really physically was difficult.
I say that the whole first month of the trail, when we started, that it was like trauma for me. I would wait.
Oh.
I'd be still in my bag in the morning or whatever, and I'd think, oh my God, can I do this again today? Am I going to be able to make it? Because it was so hard.
It was hard, and it was so much uphill that my Achilles were kind of sore. Like I was hobbled. I had that hiker hobble like a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would be and I'd be achy and going, oh my God. I mean, it was just straight up and straight down. And it was really physically challenging, but I was amazed. So when we started, I thought, I don't know if our bodies can do something like this. I don't know if our feet will hold up and our legs, and we'll just try and see. But we actually got stronger.
Yeah, definitely.
And I actually on the next trails felt better. I felt my body felt better. So I have felt like I've gotten stronger as I've done it, but I didn't know what was going to happen. So that was a surprise. And we were tired. That whole Appalachian Trail was just unreal.
Yeah. And we're not used to humidity at all. So once it got to be, late May and the humidity kicked in full blast, I was like, this is so.
It was a challenge, but at the same time, we loved every minute of it. Loved every single minute of it.
You showed it. I tell you, you showed it on your faces. You showed it. You were joyful. I mean, and having that joy was fabulous. As I say, we met at Glencliff, which was just before we went up Moosalot the next day. Yes. I think it was. Yeah. And so we were then about to hit the really, really tough stuff, weren't we? And I saw him. And this comes back to watching some of your videos to see what else you've been doing and so on. There's one video I looked at, and it said it was talking about coming back better and stronger. Have you found it tougher to recover after hikes more recently? I mean, I'm older than you guys, but we're all getting up there, I suppose. Are you finding it physically more demanding to make a comeback, or are you doing things with your life to make sure you do recover quicker?
We are determined to recover for sure. I don't know if we're recovering quicker or not. We've done really well until this last this Arizona Trail this year. The Arizona Trail, we had some problems. We both did some physical stuff. We got sick on top of that. But yeah, but I had tendonitis in my feet, and I hobbled for 260 miles. I limped, and that caused some other problems. So that was different. And that was the first time that we had to. Annette had some stuff with her hip. That's the first time that we've had that kind of issue while we're hiking. And so we've been really back here rehabilitating and trying to get. I mean, we feel pretty good now. I mean, I feel like we recovered, but it does take some effort, and we put a lot of effort into, stretching and strength training.
Yeah, very intentional. Looking at, obviously this is a weak area for us, so we need to look at strengthening exercises that will support this.
And I had some health issue that I was on a medication I've never been on before. And I'm thinking that medication impacted some of my issues that I had. So we have stuff going on like that all the time as you're getting older, like all of a sudden something else changes that causes another problem, and then you're determining what that is. So we're in a process, but we are solution oriented and feel like no matter what, we will work it out somehow. We don't have a problem where we can't recover. You know what I mean? Like,
and we still want to be out in nature and out there. So if we have to modify and do it some other way, we'll figure out a different way to do it. I was just telling Kristy on this Slovenia trip, I said, I just read that they just started this, you can buy a bus pass for the whole summer, And I said, if something happens at the beginning, we can't hike, we'll figure out a different way.
Or we'll rent bikes, or we'll do something.
Yeah, because you don't just do hiking, do you? You're RVers, you do your kayakers. Do you do biking as well?
Yeah, we had a great summer last summer. We biked.
Yeah.
And it was just really fun.
Nice. Now, one of the things, and we did actually talk about this, but I'd like you to tell people what your answers to this is. When couples go on a hike, or in your case, three of you, it was you, Lynn, you two and Lynn, do you have that conversation about what happens if somebody has to quit? Because I wasn't quite sure of your answer when we spoke about it previously, and I wonder if you can clarify what you would do if one of you had to quit.
Yeah, we started out that hike of the Appalachian Trail, and we wanted to, first of all, we wanted to eliminate a group dynamic, because we don't want somebody following along that doesn't want to do what, you know what I mean? So we kind of said, even though we're starting together because we knew each other for so long and had hiked before, even though we're doing this and starting together, let's all be independent also. Just like if you're starting alone and you meet a tramley,
sure,
you're kind of with a group, but you're still by yourself kind of. And to operate that way. So if somebody wants to go faster, we support the person going faster. If somebody wants to quit, we support the person quitting. Whatever, each person has the responsibility to hike their hike, because we wanted everybody to enjoy and do their hike. So we kind of verbalize that right from the beginning. And that means that we all have to be self-accountable, listening to yourself, making sure you're doing what you want to do, and verbalizing that. And so we open that door right from the beginning. And I think for the most part, we did okay. I can't say we were excellent at that, but and there was some tension here and there. But you know what? Even then, we just took it as a growing opportunity, and we worked through stuff, and I grew a lot. I learned a lot about myself, and painfully had to take some action in my life, and you know what I mean? So even though we tried to set it up like that, basically we said, there's not a leader of this group. We're all leaders. We're leading our own self. Be accountable and do that, and have a great hike.
I admire you for thinking along those lines. That is hard to do, though. But you know what, though? To think back to a word you said 5 minutes ago, intentional. To be intentional and know where you are, that this is your individual hike.
Yep.
It would all depend, of course, on if, for example, you two are a couple. So if one of you was badly injured, the other one, I would think, would likely want to be with them to make sure they were okay. But if Lynn wants to go on ahead or whatever, or wanted to stop, it wouldn't be quite the same dynamic, would it?
Right. But even then, with Annette and I, if one of us wanted to quit, we already set that up. That if the other one wants to go on, we want them to go on. We'll just, you know what I mean? Like, even then, you're able to do that. Now, what would happen sometimes is that a lot of times we were just so flexible that if one of us said, I need one more day in town, we all just took it, and there was not an issue. I mean, really, most of us are tired, and we're like, yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, those kinds of things were easy. And none of us really got injured where we couldn't go on. And we all, kind of completed,
Sure.
At one point, Lynn injured or she had plantar fasciitis and had to get off. And Annette and I went on, and then we met up with Lynn later, and then she finished later. So we did do that. But Lynn, that's because Annette and I had a date that we had to get to, and we had to finish by. So, but we already verbalized that and knew that. So that's just stuff we worked out. I think the biggest piece is making sure everybody needs to be able to stand up for themselves and verbalize what they need and what they want. Because you could have, like, if I say, hey, you guys, I want to go 5 more miles, and somebody doesn't want to, but they do it anyway, then you got some tension, right?
Yes.
And so you need people to be saying, oh, I don't feel like doing that. Or you need people to be in an adult part of themselves that kind of verbalize what they need and and so we worked on that. And there was times where all of us were not perfect. I mean, but I think at least we had the attitude, at least, that you're growing. And these are opportunities to grow within our dynamic and deal with things. And so it was fine. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was good. Put it that way.
And you know how, like, if you're having a day where maybe your knee is bugging you and it's super hot and super humid and you've got, 25 bug bites, at least I really have to focus on keeping my perspective. Like, those are my issues. I need to be dealing with those.
Sure. Sure.
And
yeah.
It was a challenge.
It is intentional.
It was a challenge, and it was a great challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I admire that positivity, because I can't think of anything worse than having the responsibility or feeling any responsibility towards someone else out there. It was enough I could do to keep on my feet all the time. I was falling all the darn time. So you the fact that you did that as a group is terrific. And I want to talk about your Katahdin day, because I've seen lots of people's Katahdin days. They're down at down the bottom there, and they take the pictures. They start walking. The next picture you see, they're just approaching Katahdin. You've got some of the best video of climbing Katahdin. And I actually watched it twice this morning to see how good it was, because it shows how much climbing there actually is on the trail. Did you find that difficult physically? I know you were at the end of your trail and the adrenaline was running, though. I was shocked how much climbing was involved, and I've done it twice. So, your video really showed it to me again.
Yeah, that was some climbing. Now,
we love that day.
I have to tell you, that was my best day on the trail. I like scrambling up those rocks.
Yeah.
More so than just hiking straight up something where you're just like walking. I'd rather climb and do. So we loved that part, but it was a lot. It was a lot of climbing. I mean, I had no clue what that was going to be like going up to Katahdin. I had no idea.
No, did I. But part of that, though, I tell you, but that is because you don't normally see that. But you actually specifically filmed a lot of the climbing. You got somebody standing above you to film it. I don't know if you took a cameraman with you, but you had someone filming the whole time, and it was terrific, and I absolutely loved it. But then, because I say, God, they had a lovely day to go up Katahdin, but then the wind really took over once you got to the tablelands. What was that like? Because suddenly it was massive around you.
It was really windy. We were lucky to have a clear day. I mean, some people have the clouds and the thing. I mean, the sun was out, but it was windy. It was great.
At that point, you're so excited to be finishing and to be up, like, oh God, we made it. We didn't get hurt, and we're going to,
Yeah, and
you have that feeling.
Yes. Oh, you're then going to make it. And I can see in the video, I can see the first sight you must have seen of the brown sign. That's an emotional thing as well. And talking of emotion, because at the summit on your video, that kind of took me by surprise. You refer to your sister Mel Christie, who died of cancer in 2015, and you carried and you scattered her ashes at the top. That's such a terrific tribute to her, and you actually referred to her as a Wonder Woman.
Yeah, she was a Wonder Woman. Yeah,
what was she like? What was she like? Tell us about her.
She was just spectacular. She's 2 years older than me. She was a police sergeant in Pueblo, Colorado, where she was tough. She'd chase people down. She'd be tackling people. She was unbelievable, but very lighthearted and fun, super fun. So we did a lot of backpacking trips with her, and she always had some kind of gag or some kind of joke thing. I mean, she was just fun. And we lived a couple of blocks away from each other when in 2015, when we sold our house. We were only a couple blocks away from her, but she died. She was diagnosed. She was 52 years old and diagnosed with melanoma, so skin cancer, but it had metastasized to her lung. Yeah. So by the time they diagnosed it, she was not well. I mean, so I think from diagnosis to the time she died was like 3 months.
Oh, geez. You know what? Being able to do that at the top, though, it's an important moment for you in your life at the top of Katahdin anyway, and to kind of share it with, scattering your sister's ashes. It was emotional for me to watch it, so it must have been a hell of an emotional thing for you to do. Yeah. And after the AT, you went on to do the CDT in 2020 and the PCT in 2021 to complete the Triple Crown. I mean, I've only done the AT, so I can't imagine how accomplished you must feel having done the Triple Crown. What do you feel when you complete these trails? Is it another check in the box thing, or we've done that one, let's move on to the next?
Not at all.
You know what is so funny is that we were going to go to Europe after the Appalachian Trail. That following year, 2020, we had a Europe trip planned. We had no intention on hiking. We thought at some point we'd hike the PCT and the CDT, but we weren't but there's other things out there. So when that canceled,
COVID COVID was totally our motivator on that.
Yeah, well, they canceled our Europe trip, and we went down to start the PCT because it hadn't closed yet. So we were on the PCT for 2 days, and we get the email that they really are recommending people to get off.
Sure.
So we got off, and we went home to Colorado, and we're there for a couple months. We had no idea what was kind of going on. And then in June, things started kind of getting, it's like in March, everything shut down, but things were kind of different in June, especially in those states of Wyoming and Montana. And the CDT is different. Their website said, just follow protocols, wear a mask, don't eat inside, eat outside. So we thought, well, let's just start. It was June. So we said, let's just start at the Colorado-Wyoming border and start walking north, and let's see what happens.
And that was, it was quite a start, because when our friend Jay dropped us off, it was cold, it was snowy,
and there was snow.
Feet of snow on the ground. It was crazy. It was like, this is going to be hard.
We're wandering around. You couldn't see any signs. They were under snow. It was fun. But
it was hard. Those first couple of days were hard.
And then there were a bunch of down trees that we had to crawl under and over. It was unreal.
Massive, because of the COVID, they had no trail crews out. Right?
Of course.
So everything that was wrong with the trail was just wrong with the trail. It wasn't going to get better.
But we started walking, and we just kept walking. And pretty soon we're up and we're done. We get to Montana. We get to the Glacier National Park was closed, so we took another way around. We could get up to the border.
Sure.
And we were taken up there. We went so far. And then anyway, but then we were like, okay, well, let's flip around. It was like September at this time. Let's flip around into Colorado. And
Kristy and I, Lynn dropped off in Montana, early in Montana, and then Kristy and I said, let's just keep going. And we had, because we had both backpacked for our whole lives, right? We had the most remarkable trip through Colorado. Beautiful weather, calm, beautiful nights. Great.
Lovely.
We were just like,
aspen trees were golden.
Yeah, like hiking in a big bowl of butter. You're just like, oh, this is incredible.
And then New Mexico was incredible. I thought New Mexico will probably be all right. I didn't think it'd be as good as it. I loved it. I loved New Mexico too. So we ended up finishing the trail. And
awesome.
It wasn't like, oh, we planned it for 3 years and now it's here and now we just kind of said, well, let's just start and see where we go. And then, and we loved that trail. We really
that was our favorite.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's the circumstances, but you weren't expecting to do it and finish it, and suddenly there you were, and COVID gave you that opportunity to do it. And I suspect you were probably safer out there than you would have been anywhere.
Yeah, and I really liked that it's pretty just remote and wild. You don't even have. You're not looking for permit. There's you just go. It's just like, okay, this is here. You just go do your thing. And we would be in really remote areas where we didn't see people for days and didn't have cell service. And you're in landscapes that are incredible. The Great Divide Basin in Wyoming is unbelievable. It's like this red, open desert. And then you walk right into the Wind River Range, which is one of the most beautiful places in the U.S., the Wind River Range. And then you go into Yellowstone National Park, and then you're in Glacier.
You get to walk right through some of the features of Yellowstone, not the big main ones that they have the boardwalks on, but you're back there in that. So you have like a mini geyser next to you, or the little bubble steam pops are going as you're walking down the trail. You're just like, this is incredible.
It was incredible.
It sounds it. I suspect it's beyond me now, because it's about 3,000 miles, I think, and which seems incredibly long way to me.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, right.
The one thing about Continental Divide Trail is it's not one trail. There's many routes that you can take, and you decide as you go. Even if you get on far out, there's like a pink trail, a brown trail.
Yeah.
Because it all depends on weather and what you want to see. Even from Yellowstone, you could take the Super Butte cutoff, which cuts out 350 miles.
Yeah, well, I actually followed Dixie on the Continental Divide Trail when she went in 2018. We podcasted from the trail, and she said it's like a pick your own adventure. So she was linking. She did including an 80-mile. I think it was an 80-mile road walk, which wouldn't have appealed to me at all. But you actually mentioned earlier on a hike you're doing this year. I think is it in Slovenia. Tell us about that. Yeah. How did you learn about that?
Yeah, we were did a cycling trip in
friends
Austria.
on the Danube.
Yeah.
Cycled the Danube.
That was in 2011, and a guy on the train asked us what we had been doing, and then he said, "I've been hiking in Slovenia, and I would highly recommend hiking in Slovenia." So we just kind of made a mental note of it. We knew at some point we would get there, and actually that was going to be a part of our trip when we in 2020 when it got canceled. But so anyway, we started looking up Slovenia, and as I'm looking, there was a couple of trails, and then I said, "Oh my gosh, look at the Slovene mountain trail!" And the more we researched, we were like, "Gosh, we totally want to do this trail." It's 350 miles.
You go over 30 mountains.
Wow!
You go through the Julian Alps and the Triglav National Park.
Monski Alps. That's amazing.
So we're really excited. It's hut to hut. So you hike hut to hut, so we can go lighter, which we're glad about.
Nice.
That.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And they have food and different things at the hut, and it just looks like a beautiful place.
You really have chosen some adventures with your life. I mean, how do you see the next 10 years? Have you still got bucket list items?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talk about doing things with your biological clock kind of in mind. Like, we looked at the Slovene mountain trail, and I said, I'm 7 years older than Kristy, so I said, I'm pretty sure I could still do it. I think I could do it.
And it's hard. It's supposed to be really difficult, but we want to do the difficult things now.
So we looked at it that way, like, okay, let's do some of the harder, because we had thought, we'll go do a Camino. But we could probably do a Camino in our 80s, Like, don't you think you could too, right? Like,
I think so. I did it when I was 65, 66. Yeah, it was a walk, not a hike, but it was a lovely walk, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think once you get into almost any walk, as long as your feet are okay, you can just get there. Just keep going and slow. I think the biggest problem for most people is they want to take it on. They want to take, almost challenge the hike. You never need to do that. Just let it come to you, and you'll be fine. Well, look, I so appreciate you ladies coming on, and forgive me for the technical difficulties which we had earlier on. It was a pleasure to speak to you, and it was a pleasure to meet you back in 2019. And when you finish the Slovenian hike, come and tell us about it, because no one's ever talked about that one on the show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's cool. Well, lovely to talk to you, and we'll speak again soon, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Cheers then. Bye. I love their attitude, don't you? They all hike as partners, but each is separately accountable for her successes, her failures, and her actions. Very simple, and a conversation couples should really have before setting out on a long trail. As Kristy said, everybody needs to be able to stand up for themselves and verbalise what they want. If we could all do that, Kristy, we'd be a much better world. And I meant it when I talked about their footage on Katahdin. Check it out on their YouTube channel. It gives you a really excellent idea of the climbing you have to do once you get above tree line. It was a bit of a shock to me, I tell you. And as you know, I'm always interested in hikes I've never heard of, so I hope they come back and share their experiences on their upcoming Slovenia hike. Just before we move on, I wanted to mention a postcard I was given when I arrived at Lady Di's B&B at Trail Days this year. I've not mentioned it before, but I was clearing out some stuff in my office the other day when I came across it. It was from somebody who signed himself simply as Mudsky. Mudsky wrote, "Hey Mighty Blue, thank you for the inspiration. You're right, old guys could do this. I've benefited from the guidance provided by you and your guests. Cheers, Mudsky." And the reason I wanted to acknowledge this postcard was because it's true. Old guys and gals can do this. Our guests have brought their vast knowledge to you all, and while not everything is going to make sense to you, there's going to be something that somebody says that just resonates with you and gives you the encouragement you need to get out there. Thanks, Mudsky. You made my day. Now the Mighty Blue Class of 23, and last week's unsung hero, I guess, the modest Joanne Flagg. Here she is. Hey, Joanne, how are you?
Good. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, thanks. You were on our show this past week, or I'm recording now on Friday the 21st. You were on our show, but you weren't on it, if you know what I mean. We had somebody talk about you instead. So you're either so modest or it didn't seem to make much difference to you. But, how did you see that happening when you met Kim Montenegro?
Oh, when I met Kim. It was a rainy day. We'd been slogging a lot, and we came across this blue pack, and it was kind of eerie. Because you think, oh, maybe somebody's digging a cat hole, but I didn't get that feeling. It was just like a pack sitting on the trail. And then a little farther later, there was a little ditty bag of the same color. But we kept going, and we came soon to the shelter where she was. And immediately, she said she hurt herself. And I said, we'll stay with you this afternoon and get you out tomorrow. And she wanted to get out tomorrow. So we didn't know what was wrong. I threw my bag over her with her bag. She had such good sensibilities. She had fallen in the water, but she brought her sleeping bag with her to the shelter. She took it out and brought it with her.
Yeah, that was good thinking. I thought of that when I was talking to her. Yeah, that was really smart thinking. Yeah.
She's amazing.
So, I think your magic words were, we're going to stay with you. Because I think she was really in need of help. And it does show the importance of being prepared to ask somebody for help when you're out there. And also, and I think, I don't know whether you heard it on the show, but, I think most hikers would have given up their day's hike to help another person in need, don't you?
Yes, I do. And I know she would do it for somebody else. And I know somebody would do it for me.
Yes, exactly
so
that. Exactly that.
It's just an immediate, you don't even think about what your plans were. It's like, no, we'll help you.
Yeah,
you need help. You need to get out. You can't stay here forever. And there's no way you can get out on your own.
Yeah.
So it's just what you do.
So you've had some bad weather. I understand generally. I mean, how bad has it been, and where have you? I can't remember the last time we spoke. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, probably. Where were you when we last spoke?
I had been through the Whites.
You'd already gone
I was
through
just
the Whites, right?
I was just north of the Mahoosuc Notch.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
I had been through the Notch.
Yeah, that in itself is an exciting thing. So, so what's happened in Maine so far? You're now as far as Monson?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Exciting.
We had some bad days. The trails were, they're so messy and muddy for days after it rains for a while.
Yeah.
And so I stopped in Rangeley. I needed to pick up my miles to make sure I hit my target date. So I separated from the folks I was hiking with to just move ahead. And I stopped in Rangeley. I was only there for 5.5 hours, and it was fantastic. I stopped at the gear store there, and they had this porch swing, and they had coffee. And I just put my feet up and watched traffic go by for a few minutes.
Nice.
And it was just lovely. Everybody was so kind. The post office, the laundromat, the place where I ate. It was just a lovely stay. I was only there for 5.5 hours, and I had a very nice gentleman hitch me in and a very nice gentleman hitch me out.
Very cool.
And I headed over Spalding, the Crockers, the Bigelows, all of which I loved.
Aren't the Bigelows awesome? Absolutely awesome.
I had some great views in the Bigelows. It was really nice.
Lovely. So why were you in a hurry, by the way? Is there a time certain you wanted to get off Katahdin and get back south again? What's the hurry?
So I wanted to be done by the 31st because I have that plane ticket to Iceland.
I still can't get over this. It doesn't register with me that one of our class is going to Iceland, for God's sake. so your tickets are on the 31st, so 10 days time, and you're at Monson now. You've got to get through the 100-mile wilderness. You'll do that easily, yeah. So when do you think you'll actually be going up Katahdin?
Well, my plane ticket's for the 3rd, so I'm planning to go over Katahdin on the 31st.
Right. Okay.
Of July.
Right.
So I was just at the ATC center here. Yes, and I contemplated. Everybody is like, "Oh, you can do it faster than that," but I have a plan, and I don't want to rush. And you talk about that a lot, like not rushing and enjoying it. And I enjoy meeting my targets. Like I wanted to be on Monson in this day, and I pushed a little bit to get here, but I feel how that pushing makes me tired too.
Yes, for sure.
And I still did swim in lakes, and I still did stop and look at the views and talk to people, but still I don't like getting into camp at 8:00. And some I've had so many days where there's just something that comes along. Like day before yesterday, I got turned around on one of the mountains and went 0.6 miles back down the mountain before I figured it out.
Oh, that's
and I had to climb back up. And then another day was, I've got 4 miles left and I got 2 miles of this really sweet trail, and then this rocky ledge across rock slides, and then this straight down on rocks with loose active erosion that just was so slow and painful for my knees. So that bogged up that day because my last mile was really slow getting into camp, and it's like, I don't like those days. So I'm good with taking my time through the 100-mile wilderness.
Well, this is, I think you've already found out now, this is a real challenge, isn't it? New Hampshire, I actually thought after New Hampshire, well, I can relax now. I know Maine can't be anything like New Hampshire. Maine is not easy at all. It's really hard a lot of the time, isn't it?
I didn't know there were 4,000 footers in Maine. I don't know why I didn't know that.
And you have to go over them as well.
Yeah. Most of them, yeah.
So what's it like in Monson? Yeah. What's it like in Monson this time of year? Because a lot of the northbounders aren't there yet, although obviously some have gone through. Are there many there where you are?
There's quite a few at the I'm at Shaw's Hostel. Yeah, of course,
yeah.
She said today was a slow day, but there's probably over 10 of us here.
Wow. Are most of those Nobos, or are they Flipfloppers?
There's some southbounders.
Right, of course, yeah.
Most of us, I think, are Flip-Floppers.
Right.
But the lady at the ATC said she didn't think that the sign-up list for Katahdin, there's like a 12-person list for staying at the birches before you go to Katahdin. She didn't think that was quite going to be full yet. So
Okay. You excited about getting to Katahdin?
Oh, I was so emotional this morning. I was like, I'm on my way to Monson, the last stop before the big wilderness and the big mountain.
So you said you've gone ahead. You said you've gone ahead of people now. Are you going to be going through the 100-mile wilderness by yourself, or are you going to team up with some people?
I'm doing it by myself.
Okay.
And there are people around, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. Good. Or the river crossings are getting lower.
Oh, are they? Good.
So they're getting pretty much below the risk stage. I had a couple yesterday one yesterday where a lot of people had road walked around it, but I was there late in the day and I did the river crossing. So
how bad was it?
I think if it was any higher, I would have needed to back up and wait.
Wow. How deep was it then?
Just up over my waist.
Oh, bloody hell. Oh dear, I wouldn't enjoy that at all. I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky with my river crosses, and thank God I was. So and I can't remember. The canoe was still running across, obviously, to Karatunk. So did you enjoy that? It's kind of a bit of a tradition sort of thing. It was quite kind of fun thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. We got there. There was a line. He had like 15 of us lined up at one point, and he could only take one person at a time because the river was high.
Oh wow! So that would take a while then,
yeah. It tied me up. It's funny too because I was in a line of 6 people coming down the mountain, and we were walking through water and doing crossings. And I said, I just want to take a 5-second video, and 3 people walked by me, and that was like an hour's worth of weight that I cost myself extra by being 3 people later in line. But it was nice. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm excited for you because you've now got the 100-mile wilderness. Have you thought about the time you're going to take to do it? Because if you're saying you're going to go up Katahdin on the 31st, which is 10 days' time, you really are going to take your time through the 100-mile wilderness, or are you going to take another day at inshores tomorrow?
I'm going to head out tomorrow morning, and then I can take my time, and if I need a zero along the way, I can do that, or right before Katahdin. It also gives me time to watch the weather and see.
And are you going to get a resupply at Joe Mary Road?
I have to talk to the hostel yet about that. You mean like with a bucket?
Yes, it's
like drop off a bucket.
Yeah, it's really worth it. They're very efficient, and you don't want to be carrying 5, 6, 7, 8 days of food through there, do you?
Right. So that's what I want to do is set up one bucket drop because I just came out of Rangeley with 7 days of food to get here.
All right.
It's just not fun.
No, that's to carrying food. People carry way too much. I think people carry way too much food generally, and you've got to take the right amount for you to get to a certain place. Did you have, when you got from Rangeley to where you are now to Monson, did you have enough food or did you have too much food? In other words, did you come into Monson with food?
I came into Monson with a couple of mini Snickers bars and a package of salmon.
Good planning. Good planning, Joan.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, this is, say, the 21st. You're going to be, I'd love it if we could hear you even better on Katahdin, but that's unlikely. But at some stage, just after you go up Katahdin, just text me and I'll get on the phone as soon as I can, because I'd love to hear what your experience of going up Katahdin was. All I can say now is just enjoy yourself. The 100-mile wilderness. I absolutely loved it the second time. First time we slack packed. For the first 4 days, went back to Monson each night, which was ridiculous because we had way too much to drink each night as well. But it was doable. But you know what? It wasn't as much fun. And going the second time and actually experiencing the 100-mile wilderness, because this is really the only wilderness you're going to get. It's a wonderful experience. So just enjoy it, have fun, and we'll speak to you soon. Okay.
Okay, sounds good, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, Jane. Cheers then. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
I hope you heard that slight hesitation in her voice as she fielded another question from me about why she's hurrying so much. I'm sure she was shouting to herself, "I'm going to Iceland, you silly old fool." What an adventure, eh? After Katahdin, it's a flight across the Atlantic, hiking trip, then back to the AT. Now that is a full summer. Before we hear from our next member of the class, I had 3 questions for Nancy East, who was our veterinarian guest a couple of weeks ago. The first one was, what does she recommend about dog poo? Nice. I bring biodegradable dog bags and have done all of the following. Once put them in a privy, buried a few way off the trail and away from water sources and huts, and once flung them way out in the woods as far as possible. Nancy replied, regarding poo, it's best to either pack it out or bury it like you would human feces. At a minimum, I'm thinking getting it off the side of the trail is a best practice if the other 2 options aren't feasible for some reason. Question number 2 was, what does a dog sleep on or in? When we were wet, I tried to get my pup into my mummy bag, but she wasn't keen on the tightness. Usually, I just let her sleep on my bag or on a spare piece of clothing next to me. Nancy replied, for sleeping, I usually bring a separate sleeping pad for my dog, but I typically use a cut-to-size closed cell foam type pad. Just something to get the dog off the ground and onto something a bit more insulated and comfortable is the goal. They actually make dog-specific sleeping bags. Really? So those are a good choice. An alternative would be an insulated jacket. Roughwear makes both types of these products, and I'm always happy with what they make. They're easy to find at most major outfitters like REI. The last question, number 3, was rain, dog raincoat or not? I don't have one, but after 12 plus hours of rain or non-stop rain on the trail for more than a day or 2, it worries me that it's too much soggy time for a doggy. Excellent. Nancy's answer for this was, regarding rain, core body temperatures of dogs run higher than ours. Normal temperatures typically 100 to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, so they're not as quickly prone to hypothermia as we are. But it can certainly happen in rainy conditions coupled with colder temperatures and wind. If it's warm enough outside, most dogs do pretty well with wet coats as long as you can bring something to dry them off with once you're finished with a hike or getting into a tent. But they do make dog-specific rain jackets for rain conditions in cooler temperatures. But just like with human rain jackets, it's nearly impossible for dogs to stay dry in them with prolonged rain. It just might help keep the dog warmer to have one on, if the conditions are worrisome for hypothermia. So, I think we've covered the dog questions for you now. Hope that helps, and thanks so much to Nancy for taking the time to respond to these questions. Our second member of the class of 23 today is Steve Nota. If you recall, Steve was carrying on from his attempted thru hike last year, and he was getting really close last time we spoke. Let's see what happened. So we're on now with Steve Nota. And last time we spoke with Steve, he was just south of Rangeley. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Steve. How the heck are you?
Oh, good. But you're even better than well because you are now finished, aren't you? How you feeling?
Happy, exhausted, elated.
How much weight did you lose?
Oh, dear. Probably around 20 pounds. But I've gained...
Oh, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I've gained a ton of it back already. I'm eating very well.
Cool, sure. Now, as I say, we last spoke when you were south of Rangeley. Tell us what the rest of the miles were like, because Maine is not an easy state, is it, at all?
Oh, Steve, let me tell you, my trip through the Whites and Maine was dastardly. I mean, the trail was dastardly for me. It was extraordinarily wet. The trail was slippery as I hurt myself. So when I left the Hostel of Maine, actually when I left, as I was passing through, after I went across, the Kennebec River?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just walking along the trail on a relatively flat part, and all of a sudden my back went out. And, I was negotiating slippery areas and things like that. I couldn't walk for 20 minutes. The pain was like that. Now, it was just a soft tissue injury, but, it's just accumulation of, really slippery, rough conditions, so you're not necessarily slipping and falling, but you're certainly slipping. Your body's reacting and all the rest. So I did that. So had to rest for a few days and then continued on. And I'll tell you now, I still have to do the 100-mile wilderness because my back barely got better. I had a friend who lives in by Millinocket, has a camp on the lake there.
Nice.
So I rested my back for about 4 days, waiting for the weather to break, and then I did the climb up Katahdin. Fell like the klutz that I am. Re-injured. I didn't re-injure the back badly, but I certainly tweaked it.
How'd you fall? Where were you when you fell? Were you near the top?
Yeah, I was on Thoreau Ridge, just walking down. I had already summited. Life was good, and you're looking around, and instead of looking at the ground, you're looking around because it was a beautiful day. And 1 minute I'm on my feet, and the next minute I've got a face plant.
I see. Coming down from the top after you've done your hike, I reckon is one of the most dangerous parts of the hike because you're kind of relaxed and it's over, but it's not really. So tell us what that actual day of climbing was like. Did you actually enjoy getting up there and touching the sign?
I did. I'll admit. Cue the tears as you get there and you touch it. I'm kind of tearing up now when I think of it, it was, yes, very emotional for me, and I'm glad that I did it. A lot of great memories came back as I was up there savoring, and it was a beautiful view. It was a perfect day. So that was wonderful. And, there were a few people that I had met along the way up there. So, we all celebrated and hugged and all the rest of that stuff. And, so that was wonderful. No question.
Were you prepared for your summit photo? Yeah, I keep telling people they need to be ready for it. When you get there, you don't just want to climb on the back of the sign and just have a picture taken. You want something that's going to be with you forever. So what did you do?
I kissed it.
Of course you did.
I kissed the sign, as I did the mountains as I went up. So if you see a Mount Washington photo, a Mount Moosilauke, in the rest, I always kissed that sign and made it. And then I stood behind it, 2 thumbs up. So I was very happy. It was a smile that took a minute to come because I really was very emotional. But I'm glad that the fellow who was taking the photo said, "You better smile because that's what you want to remember." And I did, and it came out well.
Good. So you got a good summit picture. So you say you've still got the 100-mile wilderness to do. Is that going to be this year, or are you going to do it another time?
Well, my wife's coming over in August,
Right.
And she claims she wants to help me do some of it.
Nice.
So we'll see if we can do that. It really comes down to how the back's coming along.
And how is it feeling right now?
Well, when you take Motrin, everything's good, right?
This is you've proven the fact that this is a very debilitating trail for some people.
Yeah.
Did the physicality of it surprise you at all?
What surprised me the most, Steve, was the cumulative effect.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, when I was on the southern part of my trek,
mm-hmm.
nothing was bad. Once, for whatever reason, once I hit the whites, my body just started breaking down. Whether it was from falls or the rock scrambles as you go up and down, as you well know. So I think that cumulative effect of the final, let's say, quarter, 1/5 of that trail was really beat the snot out of me.
That's a great expression, by the way. Yeah. And it does. It's. I don't think people quite realise until they get there. And it does become sort of your job, and you keep pushing on some, but it's taking its toll on you every single day. So, what for the first couple of days after? Did everything suddenly start to ache again?
With the first day, not so much, but as I've been back and I haven't been, walking a lot, hiking, with weight on my back. Last night, for instance, I went to the movies with some friends, and when I stood up, gee whiz, my right knee is kind of feeling sore because I was sitting so. You know what I mean? And it's that finally, saying, okay, it's time to start fixing ourselves. So that's what I'm doing. I'm letting the body recover and and go through that. But no doubt about it, yes, I am achy.
And it's probably too early to really know what this means to you. But have you thought of any takeaways you'd like to take with you, through, for the rest of your life that you've learned from the trail?
I've certainly learned patience, and certainly learned, I won't say frugality, but appreciate, those good things in life that we have.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, we get grumpy about, when I talk to my daughter and my wife, I go, that's a first world problem, right?
Yes.
And sometimes we do get really wrapped up in these first world problems, and it's like, well, I could be trying to figure out how I'm going to stay dry in my tent tonight as I'm chucking it down, or, it sure is nice to have dry feet, and just not be covered in mud all day. So it was stuff like that. Yes, I appreciate that in the wonderful lives we are able to live in comfort compared to the depravities we have on trail. Yeah.
Depravity is a nice word for it.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm so pleased you're able to join us again this year on the trail. I hope you do get the 100-mile wilderness in. Come back on and let us know how that goes if you do it. But in the interim, congratulations on doing this, and send me a picture. I want to put them in put a view on the Katahdin, obviously, and I'll put it in the show notes next week.
I'll flip it. I'll flip it to you after we hang up, man.
Okay, buddy. All right. Well done, and and thanks for being part of the team.
No worries. Happy to be part of it, and I'll look forward to hearing how the other folks do.
Cheers, man. Take it easy. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
In case you were wondering why we were laughing at the beginning, Siri had just spoken to me for no apparent reason. I got a bit spooked. That certainly seemed to be the AT baring its teeth at hikers in the north, didn't it? Steve called it dastardly through the whites and Maine. I mean, they're tough enough as it is in decent weather, dastardly is a whole new can of worms. I've added Steve's Katahdin pick to the show notes to celebrate. Before we hear from Nancy Farrell, our next Class of 23 member, I wanted to thank our superb donors. This week, our monthly donors were Gregory Gerpner, Jessica Diaz, Hugh Ickrath and Melanie Swisher, while Jeffrey Godwin, Barry Hill and Molly McCarthy all stepped up with donations. Thanks to you all, and I hope that other listeners choose to step up and support these shows. You can donate by clicking on one of our many donate buttons on our hikingradionetwork.com website. And for those of you who use Zelle, well, we can work with that as well by zelling to steve@hikingradionetwork.com. If you do that, I'll be very happy indeed. Now, we already knew that Nancy Farrell was a little shaky on the trail with her boyfriend back home and not very well. Let's hear what she decided to do.
Good morning.
Hey, Nancy, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you, Steve?
Well, I'm good, but you're no longer, I say you're no longer with us. You're no longer actually.
Please?
Yes,
don't say that.
Not quite that serious, no. Yeah, so
No.
You're no longer on the trail. In fact, when we last spoke, you were in Boiling Springs on, I think it was June the 12th. So what happened? What's happened since then?
Well, what happened is I was on the trail for about a month, actually. I came off the trail July 3rd, so just, pretty much a month.
Right.
And I managed to do all of Maryland and all of Pennsylvania.
Oh my gosh.
The wonderful Rocksylvania. I totally discovered why they call it Rocksylvania. When I first started in Pennsylvania, I was like, oh yeah, there's rocks. Yeah. What are they talking about? It's not that bad, And then of course, it arrives, halfway through after Duncannon. I mean, as everybody said, it was like, and then it just got worse and worse. Those rocks were incredible. Yeah. But I managed to do all of those 2 states, which was great. I'm very, feeling happy that I managed to do that before I had to come off trail.
So what happened? Was there a deterioration in your boyfriend's health?
So, he had surgery. I think I mentioned that before.
Yeah.
And the surgery was totally, it was prostate surgery. So, I can mention it now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was successful. I mean, everything is working great there, and he recovered well from that. And when I left, that's where, he was. He had to still be careful about, not lifting weight and that kind of stuff, but he was fully recovering. So we were both confident that I could go, which is what I did. But what happened, unfortunately, is, you hear about that these days where people have surgery, and often from the surgery, you catch a bad resilient bacteria.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what happened. And then it went from, so you mentioned it to me whilst I was on trail, and then we weren't too worried at first. We thought, well, antibiotic probably will do it. But honestly, it just went from, it was a very resilient bacteria, and it went from, one lot of antibiotic to another one, and even went to having to go to hospital twice a day to get intravenous antibiotic that were, much stronger.
Wow.
Then, it was good to fight the bacteria, but the whole intravenous drug made him felt really bad. Like he was nauseous, and, it was really tough altogether. And then he did all that, and he tested, and it was still bacteria. So it just became a very heavy load for him to kind of go through a solo. And we were worried because, well, I know of acquaintances and friends of friends who basically don't make it through these resilient bacteria.
Sure.
So it could have taken a south turn pretty quickly, and I just felt that he needed to have my support. So in one way, it wasn't a difficult decision. It was, when your loved ones need you, you just basically have to be there. And so I left with no hesitation because I knew this is where I had to be.
So where were you when you made the decision that you were going to come off? Or did you say to yourself, I'm going to get through Pennsylvania, then I'm going to go home? Or did you get into New Jersey a little bit?
No, I didn't get it. I just touched the sign of New Jersey. In fact, to answer your question, we had arrived at the Delaware Water Gap,
Right, yeah.
and we were camped at a church in the lot at the back there.
Yeah,
it was really nice of all these people, and it was that night I was having my zero basically, and it was that night Jacques and I were texting, and then it just became evident that he needed my support. He had been strong and kind of stoic through this because he'd vouched to support me, so he wasn't letting on as much of how he felt physically and emotionally through this. Because he was trying to say, keep going, and you're doing great, and all that kind of encouragement. And but that night, it was something in our conversation, and then he kind of
you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell with people, can't you? Yeah, and even if it's over text, you can tell that there's something there. So now you're off the track.
So I pretty much made the decision like there and then that night. I woke up the next morning and I started to make have some tramily. So I basically announced it to my friend and to their, total astonishment because I hadn't talked about it. They knew that he was battling, some issues, but it was very quickly that I made the decision. And there wasn't any woes for me. It was like, nope, I'm leaving today. This is it. I'm saying goodbye.
So you got off the trail, and that was it for your through hike this year. How did you? I'm sure that was the right decision to do. What did you take away from the trail, though? Because you've spent a month on the trail. That's long enough to know that you either like it or you don't like it. And you did 275 miles, so you've done a proper hike. So how did you feel about the trail itself?
I felt incredibly happy and pleased, and really was so excited, and that I got to experience at least that 30-day, on the trail. Because as you said, you really get the feel for what it is to do the through hike, after you hiked a whole month. I was very pleased with many things. First is I was really thrilled with my all my gear selection. Like everything that I had was just spot on. Like I didn't miss anything. I didn't think there might be one or two little things that I would have ended up shipping home, but for the bulk of it, it was dialed in. So I was really happy with that because we all do, maybe not, but many of us do a lot of research, and it pays off. So for me, that paid off. But the other part that I was really thrilled about was more on the physical side. I had a regimen, and I'll call it a regimen. We may have mentioned it on the last call too, but I had a regimen to take care of my body. And I think all of the things I was doing really were right for me, at least. Sure. And so much so to the point that I was hiking with about 4 or 5 other people that, I met the 2 different groups. We were kind of coming together a little bit as a family. Yes. And all of them were all younger than me. And all of them had, aches and pains and sort of injuries and all sorts of things. And then one of them says to me one day, we were hiking, and they said, Nance, like, what about you? We don't hear you complain about anything. Are you not aching anywhere? Are you not hurting? And I proudly, smiled. But of course, some of it is luck too. But I think my regimen was helpful. And I said, no, I'm not. And I honestly, after 30 days, day in, day out, I wasn't hurting. So I think that I was very happy with that because it also gave me confidence that should I, again, try to hike for longer periods on long hikes, I think that I would adopt that regimen to,
very cool.
For me at least. It worked out. So I was very happy with that.
And you were very lucky with the weather to start with, because you said you didn't get your first rain for 2 weeks, which is in a wet year this year has been. So you did pretty well there.
We did, yeah.
So you're done now. Would you think you'll ever go again?
I definitely want to go again. I mean, it was such a fantastic experience. It really, it really everything that I dreamt about of what it would be to do the AT kind of came together. Like, it was great. Even the difficult parts, because at one point we were caught on the ridge in a mega super severe thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, it was nice in that the first 2 weeks, as you said, it was no rain, but I mean, we also got our share of the, you know, difficult time too. But even with all of that, you want that too, right? You want to experience
the whole
those
experience
things too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and the people, I mean, everybody on your show always talk about the people. My first couple of weeks was pretty solo, talk to people, but then, you know, from week 2 until the end, then I was coming together, as I said, with the family, which is also part of the experience. So yes, I would definitely want to go back, because it was a great experience. And, you know, obviously I aspired to do longer. So in a way, I'm satisfied, because it's almost like I got a shot of it, right? So I got a little bit of satisfaction from that month, but at the same time, I'm left I'm wanting more too.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And you actually said in your text to me, you said perhaps I'll become a myth. So tell everybody what a myth is.
So I had never heard about this before, and I was chatting with a hiker. Her name was Salmon, and she's the one that introduced it to this term, and she used it, and then she said it's a multi-year through hiker, MYTH, multi-year through hiker. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what I'll be after I came off trail. Because I mean, to be honest, as much as I would have loved, and still, you know, in my head, to do the full through hike, it is difficult for most people to carve, even me as a retired person. It is hard to carve 6 months of your life or 5 months of your life to do this. And if, you know, it affects people around you sometimes, you know, not always in the best of ways.
I think that's something you learn, and it's kind of, we've been talking about it a lot recently on the show, so I won't sort of regurgitate old arguments, although I did hear, when I recorded somebody the other day, and I'm not even sure whether this was last week's or when it was, it may be something still to come, someone talked about it more as, it was last week, more as self-care than selfish. And I think self-care is an important thing. So if you've got something out of this, if you know you can do this is something that was important to you, and you've done it for a month, you now know what it feels like. So if you choose to do it again, you will know what to expect. And this ain't easy. Yeah. You know, this ain't easy. And I'm just glad that we got the opportunity to meet you, and we got the opportunity for you to come on the show and be part of the Mighty Blue class of 23. So I appreciate that.
No, thank you, Steve. It was my pleasure. And it's so nice to be a tiny little part of your show, as I said, after listening to you for so long. And I'll continue to listen, of course. It was really my pleasure. And who knows what the future will bring? You know? Never know.
So you may be back on there
We'll
again.
be in touch.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, Nancy. Good to talk to you, okay?
Thank you. Bye, Steve. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Bye.
And you. Bye. So that's another one gone. But, you know, all these people stepped on the trail. They got off their backsides and they got to it. As Mudsky said in his postcard to me, old guys can do this. And if old guys can do it, the rest of you can as well. Go for it. You will never regret it. And if you want to learn about how to go about it, put your name down on our list for the Woods Hole weekend in late September. I'm preparing a video that I'll be putting on our Hiking Radio Network Facebook page this coming week with the cost and everything you'll be getting for your investment in your hike. Watch out for it on Facebook. I had a lot to say today, so sorry about that. Let's hear how George Stefanos hit one of the highlights on the trail as he took on Franconia Ridge. I'll see you next week. Monday the 5th of September 1983, Labour Day. Mile 1782.9. Today marked the end of day tripping for a couple of days. I began hiking one of the longest stretches of the Appalachian Trail unbroken by road crossings, the 27 miles between US 3 in Franconia Notch and US 302 in Crawford Notch. As usual, I did not get started on the trail as early as I wanted. I wanted to wake up by 6 a.m. I woke up after 8. I wanted to be on the AT by 7:30. I set out at 10:30. I wanted to reach Geo Shelter, where I planned to camp this evening. I didn't. The section of the Appalachian Trail which traverses Franconia, Garfield and Zeeland ridges is one of the most heavily used stretches of trail in the country, and I've known for more than a week that I would be hiking it over the Labor Day weekend. I've dawdled somewhat recently, enough to postpone my entry into this section until Labor Day itself. Although I saw many backpackers on the trail today, virtually all were heading out, while I was heading in. Most of the hikers travelling in my direction were day hikers. Funny, but I never seem to receive a friendly response from a day hiker when I say hello while blowing past wearing a heavy backpack. The Liberty Springs Trail, on which the AT climbs up to Franconia Ridge, is a typical White Mountains access trail, one long, sadistic climb. I've hiked it in the past, so I knew what I was getting into. Pain. 2 factors compounded the difficulty today. One was my carrying a full backpack for the first time in almost 2 weeks. The second was the continuation of the unbelievable heatwave of 1983. The temperature was in the 80s and the humidity soaring when I began hiking up from Franconia Notch. On my previous backpacking trips, I always wished to just once make the 2.5-mile climb up to Liberty Springs campsite just below the ridgeline without being compelled to stop and catch my breath every 15 minutes. The trail climbs 2,300 feet from the floor of the notch, a grueling trudge with a heavy pack on one's back. Today I did it without a stop, in 1 hour and 20 minutes. I wonder what I might have accomplished had I not recently grown accustomed to carrying a light pack. No breeze softened the climb, and I arrived at the campsite drenched in sweat. The Appalachian Mountain Club, the organisation that maintains the campsites, shelters and huts in the White Mountains, posts daily weather reports for hikers at all these locations. The weather sheet at Liberty Springs called for temperatures in the 60s at the summits today. That is rather remarkable, considering that those elevations experience a climate similar to Labrador and Canada's North Country, and it was, after all, September. It was so steamy I could barely make out a trace of the floor on the notch, and the mountains on the other side may as well have been in Tibet for all I saw of them. I sat down for 10 minutes at the site of the old Liberty Springs shelter, which has been removed, and guzzled water, finishing the 3 pints with which I had begun the hike. That works out to a water consumption rate of 5/8 of a quart per mile, an impressive statistic. I refilled the bottle at the nearby spring and headed out once more. Following another brief stretch of hard climbing, I reached the crest of Franconia Ridge. The rugged climbs continued as I followed the ridge crest over Haystack Mountain, Mount Lincoln and Mount Lafayette. The footway was rocky and rough, and the elevation hovered above 5,000 feet all along the trail. My lungs had grown used to low country oxygen levels. Time began to slip away from me in large chunks. For the entire distance from Little Haystacks to Lafayette's north summit, the trail remained above treeline and the ridge was open and alpine. The views remained virtually non-existent today, hidden behind a thick haze. Nevertheless, those 2.5 barren miles were pleasant to hike. Alpine vegetation provided an alien touch to the setting, and the exposure of the ridge allowed me the full benefit of the refreshing 15 to 30 mile-per-hour winds cranking past the summits. The perfect days I had previously experienced on that ridge also helped to alleviate any disappointment I might have otherwise suffered. I passed my last fellow hikers of the day on the 5249-foot summit of Mount Lafayette, the loftiest peak in this section. The haze was microscopically thinner up there, and I could pick out the ghostly visions of Mount Lincoln and Lafayette's north summit, as well as Greenleaf Hut. This building, the second of the 8 AMC huts which the trail passes in the Whites, is located 1 mile down the west slope of Lafayette, near a couple of small mountain ponds known as Eagle Lakes. It sits in a wonderful spot, just at treeline. I was not headed that way today, however. I still had fading hopes of reaching Geo Shelter. Large hawks were circling just below the north summit as I descended towards it, battling the gusty winds. It was a haunting sight, and a fitting farewell to the long, narrow, open ridge crest. Just past the North Peak, the Appalachian Trail began an endless, steep descent from Franconia Ridge, soon re-entering the forest. A mile later, the AT passed through a col and began the traverse of a number of minor knobs along Garfield Ridge. There were no huge climbs, but they were all rugged and time-consuming obstacles. The intervening cols all tended to be boggy. At the beginning of the climb up Mount Garfield's distinctively cone-shaped summit, I passed another lonely, lovely mountain tarn called Garfield Pond. The 600-foot climb from the pond to Garfield's 4488-foot summit seemed to last forever. On a clear day, rocks around the summit provide a grandstand view of the bowl-shaped Pemigewasset Wilderness, a vast, undeveloped valley draining a semicircle of ridges. Today there was little more to look at than another bird's-eye view of swirling water vapours. Near the end of the descent from Garfield, the Appalachian Trail passed a spring at the junction with a short side trail to Garfield Ridge Shelter. I briefly flirted with the notion of spending the night there. It was 5 o'clock and I had only covered 10 of the 15+ miles to Geo Shelter's side trail. The only problem with that idea was that it would leave me with 17 miles to hike tomorrow, and I had told my mother to pick me up in Crawford Notch at 3 o'clock. I decided to persevere in my goal to reach Geo, even though that would require hiking well after dark. From an outlook on a wooded knob a mile and a half later, I caught a glimpse of the climb ahead up South Twin Mountain and changed my mind. The 1,500-foot climb looked like Mount Everest at that point, as tired as I was. On top of that, both my legs and my flashlight batteries were seriously run down from yesterday's night hike down from Kinsman Ridge at the end of an equally long, hard day. I took a lengthy, much-needed rest stop and rolled into Galehead Hut at around 7:30. This building, the third in the AMC series of huts, is located on a high, wind-swept col on the ridgecrest at the base of South Twin's summit cone. The summer season being over, it was no longer fully staffed and had stopped serving meals. For a reduced rate, I had a bunk on which to lay my sleeping bag tonight and the use of the stove to make my dinner. The caretaker told me that the 46-person capacity hut had been full the previous night, but there were only 7 other guests beside myself tonight. I'm glad I had the sense to slow down and miss the Labour Day weekend in these mountains. I came 13 miles today in 9 hours. True to my prediction, the White Mountains have taken their toll on my hiking mileage. Tomorrow, I must hike 14 miles from here to Crawford Notch by 3 o'clock in order to be on time for my ride. I'm going to get as early as possible to start on the trail as I can and hope for a better day for my tired legs. I am not optimistic. Tuesday the 5th of September 1983, mile 1797.4. I hiked much better today. Part of that was due to the quick return of my conditioning. Yesterday my body was rebelling against the excessive abuse I had been inflicting upon it, with my recent late starts and constant down-to-the-wire finishes draining my reserves. Even as I was hiking so poorly, my body must have been marshalling its strength for the long haul. Today my endurance was back and hiking was a pleasure. The second factor in my resurgence was the mellowing of the trail itself. Today's portion of the Appalachian Trail was a cakewalk compared to yesterday's. I had managed to knock off all but one of this section's grueling climbs yesterday, and I finished the last one, the ascent of South Twin Mountain, right at the beginning of today's hike while I was feeling my freshest. I've always been fond of South Twin. At 4,902 feet, it's one of the loftier summits in New Hampshire, and the ridgecrest has an extensive alpine zone. It's somewhat more remote from Rose than Franconia Ridge, and thus one can usually find an escape from the hordes of hikers swarming Franconia summits. Today was no exception. I covered the entire distance between Galehead and Zealand Falls huts, 7 miles, without seeing another hiker. Of course, part of that was due to my timing. 2 days ago, during the holiday weekend, I imagined that all the trails around here were teeming with humanity. After South Twin, the trail was much easier, but that is a relative term in the White Mountains. I still had to contend with about 1 zillion rocks and exposed tree roots along the footway, and several short, steep climbs. Nevertheless, there was nothing to compare with the earlier grinding ascents and descents, so I was able to maintain a good pace all day. The weather also helped in that respect. The thick haze and humidity once again wiped out all the great views, preventing me from slowing down to check them out. From South Twin Mountain, the Appalachian Trail followed the ridgecrest to Mount Geo, another open summit. The trail then descended along a spur ridge into a col where it began the traverse of Zealand Ridge. There were a couple of low knobs to cross, but nothing major. There was one nice vista from a ledge overlooking a small mountain lake called Zeacliff Pond, and the pond was close enough to the ledge that the haze didn't obliterate the view completely. A short side trail about a mile later led to an even better viewpoint, overlooking Zealand Notch from the top of the cliffs forming the western escarpment of the notch. Far below, Whitewall Brook roared through a narrow defile between 2 sets of precipitous cliffs. The AT then turned away from the cliffs, descending steeply along a wooded ridge to a crossing of Whitewall Brook above the notch, turned again and followed the brook to Zealand Falls Hut, perched against the face of another cliff next to a scenic cascade. I stopped briefly at the hut to chat with the crew and refill my water bottle. From the hut, the AT continued to descend towards Zealand Notch, passing Zealand Point, another small scenic mountain tarn. The Twinway Trail, which the AT had been following since Galehead Hut, ended here, and the trail turned onto the Ethan Pond Trail, following an old logging railroad grade along the side of Whitewall Mountain, near the floor of the notch beneath the towering cliffs which form the eastern escarpment. At the junction with the Thoreau Falls Trail, 10 miles into my hike, I ran into a group of 8 day hikers, the first people I saw on the trail all day. They were a bit lost. I set them off on the right heading before stopping to enjoy the falls. A stream called North Fork plunged down a series of granite steps into a deep pool. I met only 2 other hikers on the trail during the remainder of the day. The long gradual climb from Thoreau Falls to the crossing of a spur ridge of Mount Willie didn't slow me down at all. I had to kill a few minutes here and there in order not to arrive at the road crossing in Crawford Notch much earlier than my ride. The descent into the notch was much easier than I remembered it to be from earlier hikes of this section, or more likely, I was simply in much better condition. The only real steep stretch was the last quarter-mile descent to Willie House Station Road, which the Appalachian Trail followed for a quarter-mile to US 302 and the floor of the notch. Despite my deliberate procrastination, I was very early, arriving at 2:40. I felt very good about tackling this difficult section in a day and a half with a full backpack. After yesterday's hike, I had been a little concerned about how much the White Mountains were going to slow me down. Wednesday the 7th September 1983, mile 1797.4. The television weather reports called for high winds and heavy thunderstorms today, so I delayed my ascent of the Webster Cliffs Trail and the Presidential Range for one day. As it turned out, there was no rain in the valleys today, but the summits were clouded in all day. It was probably nasty up there. The valleys and the ridge crests around here are like 2 different worlds when it comes to climate.